Hi, this is Sid, and you're listening to The Economic Story. In this episode, we're going to cover the earnings report that was apparently the most important for the street, NVIDIA. Yesterday, on Feb 21st, NVIDIA posted its Q4 and Full Fiscal 2024 financial results. The results were mind-boggling. If anybody had any doubt about the progress on the first chapter of AI, all doubts were put to rest. NVIDIA showed that its demand for its chips that are powering the AI revolution was not only high, but they pretty much dominated this market. This was proven by the strong revenue growth and the huge profit margin they commanded. Let's take a quick look at the numbers. Revenue came out at $22.1 billion. The expectation was $20.55 billion. EPS, earnings per share, came out at 5.16, while the expectation was 4.61. On both of these, they not only beat Street's expectation for this quarter, but next quarter as well. It's an easy way to say that the Street needs to raise its expectations. Now let's take a quick look at the picture of the trend. Overall revenue, if you look at it quarter by quarter, for the fourth quarter of each fiscal for the last, let's say, 3 fiscals, overall revenue has grown from 7.64 billion to 6.05 billion to 22.10 billion. That is a huge jump, mostly kind of within the last fiscal. If we break down and look at some of the segments, by the way, the major segments they have are data center, gaming, and professional visualization, and finally automotive. The most important one is data center. It used to be gaming, now it's data center, and that's where they're seeing the huge growth. So for data center revenue, Q4 revenue for last 3 fiscals has gone from 1.90 billion to 3.62 billion to now 18.4 billion. 3.62 billion 1 year back to 18.4 billion. That is massive. If you look for comparison into gaming, that has gone through 2.50 to 1.93. There was a bit of a drop to 2.90. So obviously you can see that the massive impact has come from data center. In terms of segment growth rates for revenue, overall it's gone from about 61% growth year over year for the quarter to minus 21%. There was a drop at the end of 2022, which is Q4 FY23 to wait a moment for some drama. 265% is year over year growth of revenue for the quarter. For data center, and this is huge, 97% was the growth for 3 years back or 2 years back. Then it was 11% growth. Then the latest one is 409%. Okay, this is huge. But these kind of percentage growths you may see in the market, but that typically you would see with only small companies. Now you're talking about something that's in the range of $1 trillion market cap company, and this is like humongous. So this is where it really shook the market when these numbers hit. Expectations were there, but those were beaten. So that's where the big impact is from NVIDIA results. Now the important question you might have is, how did they do it? How did they get into such an exponential growth? At a very high level, the reason is very clear. There are 2 aspects of it. They're in a market where there is huge demand, and at this point in time, they hold the major market share. Nobody has control of that, And the difficulty in this specific scenario of that specific market is that it is very difficult to come up with a product that is good enough to compete with whatever NVIDIA has. That is the high-level simple answer. But how did they get to this point? For that, we need to look at their history. Let's take a quick look at their history and get an understanding of how they shaped up their journey along the path to get to this point. So the story starts in 1993, which is when the company was founded. It was founded on April 5th, 1993 by 3 partners. This is Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski, I hope I got that pronunciation right, and Curtis Priam. So they had a vision at that point in time to bring 3D graphics to gaming and multimedia markets. This was essentially a new market, but there were certain players who were trying to do things similar at that point in time, but they wanted to advance that forward. And what they did is they created the first GPU, graphics processing unit, GeForce 256 or NV10. That is something that's one of their first major products to come out. That came out in 1999. So at this point in time, they basically invent the GPU, the graphics processing unit, which sets the stage for basically reshaping the computing industry. So earlier, it used to be the CPU only. Now you have the combination of CPU and GPU. The same year, actually ahead of this, they do their IPO. So they come into the market at a price of $12 per share. Now you might be thinking, okay, what would have happened had you invested in it at that point in time? Interesting question, not a topic of today's discussion, but feel free to wonder and calculate. Okay, story moves on. 2006, CUDA. So at this point in time, they basically open up parallel processing capabilities of GPUs to science and research facilities for unveiling the CUDA architecture. The CUDA architecture is one of their proprietary architectures, and essentially at this point in time, they're moving forward from a specific application of GPUs into a little bit more of generic application, which is moving into from a serial processing world and opening up the doors to parallel processing. This is something that's going to come up later on again in a very big way. 2012 is AI. So essentially what they say is they spark the era of modern AI by powering breakthrough AlexNet neural network. So at this point in time, neural nets are an important factor. 2010, 2012 timeframe. So they're starting to participate in the AI market. 2016, RTX comes into play. So at this point in time, they have started to build in new products, bring in new products. So they reinvent the computer graphics industry with NVIDIA's RTX product. The first GPU capable of real-time ray tracing. Now again, we won't go into the depths of what exactly that is, but it's an advancement onto previous technology for GPUs. So they are moving ahead in terms of the specific application that they brought into the market. Finally, another milestone from their point of view is Omniverse. This is something that is still playing out. It has not played out yet fully, but this is something they're pushing. And this is in line with the push from Meta with Metaverse and similar other companies as well who are talking about this Metaverse concept. Omniverse is something that NVIDIA is using the term. So they say that they are playing a foundational role in the Metaverse, which is the next stage of internet with their specific version of that. Now, obviously, with regards to 3D processing and all, which is a must-have for Metaverse or Metaverse aspect like experiences, NVIDIA's processing or its GPU processing, its parallel processing is hugely important to be able to render things that are very, very realistic. Otherwise, we might end up in a metaverse where we are interacting with only cartoon characters. So this is very, very important. So this is kind of the high-level history from 1993 to today's date and time. So at a very high level, though, I want to break up and provide you what is really important. What's the main theme of the movement or progress that NVIDIA saw? So first aspect is they went into GPUs and graphic processing. Now that is a very specific application. There was a market with gamers and those people who are already there. So it was a niche kind of market, but then kind of it was also growing along with internet and computers. And they wanted to take part into that specific market. But then to take part into that, they ended up with the GPU as a product, and GPU brought in parallel processing to a stage which was comparable and which ran in parallel to the CPU. Now that is a very important aspect of it, because your graphics processing is an application per se. Parallel processing makes it a little bit more generic. So generic formats, both technology, processes, etc., if you have ownership of that as a company, it allows you to dominate a specific, not just a market, almost a sector. But then those are difficult to roll on because the demand generation typically tends to be very difficult with regards to generic technologies, generic processes, etc. Applications, on the other hand, typically always tend to have some sort of a demand, either from people who are already trying to solve some sort of a problem, or if you're able to give that solution to a problem somebody might have but didn't necessarily realize that they can have a good solution. So applications are sometimes very important to move forward the technology. So they started with graphics processing, and then they moved up to parallel processing as a generic technology. And then with that technology, they started defining newer applications, or even finding newer applications wherever people were trying. So gaming was one aspect of that, right? 3D processing could have been another one, which might be needed for animations, etc. Gaming was the next one. Another opportunity came up with crypto. So crypto mining, when it started to take place and when the demand for that started to grow, people realized that parallel processing was hugely helpful for solving that kind of problems, which is required to be solved for crypto mining. That is again something where an opportunity came up and NVIDIA jumped into that opportunity to sell the application of the technology that they were building, they were advancing, which is parallel processing essentially. Now, the next one that comes up is AI. So AI was another aspect of it, wherein again a parallel processing came out to be able to be much more handy as compared to serial processing that we would typically see with CPUs. Again, NVIDIA jumps into that opportunity, and since they have already made so much of progress in terms of the technology development, they are essentially the only one out there, and they're reaping all the benefits of all the work that they had laid out. Now, all that being said, there are two important things that Jensen Huang, the founder, the CEO, mentions in all of these calls. And these are very important. AI is a huge theme right now going on, and their products, their chips dominate that specific market right now. Everybody is talking about AI, so we already know that NVIDIA is an important player in that, and that's why they're getting the benefit out of that. But to Jensen, their opportunity is way bigger than AI, actually. And that is something the market and a lot of people don't get as well. Now, what I'm going to mention is this. Yes, I do agree that opportunity is huge. But what is also important is that they would need to be able to build those applications or forward the market into building those applications. And that might be NVIDIA for sure, but might need other players to come in and play there as well. I believe the world's moving there, and just to be clear, that specific application, which is way bigger than even AI, at least per Jensen, is general parallel computing. So general parallel computing, just to explain very briefly, is your today's computing is based off of CPU mostly. This is serial computing. The CPU does that. GPUs, on the other hand, can do parallel computing, but historically they used to be less powerful. They used to be able to compute very smaller things. But as the technology has developed, and thanks to NVIDIA for forwarding this technology, now they're able to do much more complex advanced calculations, not to the same level as CPUs, but the biggest part they have is if you break up a problem into many smaller pieces and give it to the GPU, it can solve all of that, those smaller pieces independently in parallel, and get you that solution sometimes, depending upon how you structure that solution, way faster than the CPU can. And in many cases, the CPU may not even be able to get there in realistic time. And that is what Jensen is trying to solve. That's what NVIDIA is trying to solve, and that's what NVIDIA is trying to build the market for. This is something the hyperscalers probably already know about, and they are trying to at least prepare for the demand that is going to come. Now, it's not yet set. The demand picture has not yet fully started to change, but underneath it may be starting. But if it moves in that direction, if the world of computing moves in the direction of parallel processing, NVIDIA also terms that as accelerated processing. If the world moves in that direction, then we would start to see a huge demand for conversion of applications from a serial computing mode to a parallel computing mode. And that is huge. That is going to take quite some time. It is not only comparable to the internet, it is comparable to the build-up of computers per se as well. And so internet in essence started in the 90s. It started before, but the huge applications started to come on board in the 90s. And since then we've been building it. But computers have been there since what, 50s? So that build that has taken place over so many years, even though kind of most of the more recent architectural work started, I would say, around 70s and 80s. So even then, the last 40 years of work that has happened surrounding the CPU, around the CPU, will need to be redone with the GPU, at least some of it. So in the future, we may see a bit of more combination of CPU, GPU, or serial parallel processing. And that's what NVIDIA is bracing for, and that's what they are eyeing. That's the market they are eyeing, and that could be massive. And that's why these earnings matter. It matters for AI for sure, but there is another story so AI story could be looking at the next 5 years, 10 years, and it might be a thread of its own. But the parallel processing story could be another thread that runs for another 30-35 years. So that's big. Anyways, that's about it for today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.